Back we are again with Roxanne Bilby. She's the drug prevention coordinator here at Rogers State University. Good to have you.
Yes, good to be here. Thanks
Just
for
found
having
out
me.
We're like old home week getting together here.
Yes.
Yeah, you were related, your husband's related to the Bilbys that owned the root beer and hamburger stand on
He
Peoria
sure is.
and Tulsa.
Yep, he sure is.
God, well, tell them I had a lot of their root beer.
Okay.
Gee whiz.
That's a
Do
good
we have a
thing.
drug problem at RSU?
So I think that everywhere to an extent has a substance use issue because substance use is so prevalent. And one thing that's really important to note is that the age range of 18 to 25, that's kind of the time in life where people are more prone to experiment with substances. And so I always talk about, kind of regardless of what someone's experience is, it's really important to educate, particularly college students, on making healthy choices and not taking substances that they are not familiar with what it truly is.
And I just read today, in fact, that hallucinogenic mushrooms are back in fashion.
Sure enough.
And the side effects and the residual effects are incredible. You never know when it's time to pull the shades. What do we do about it? How do we control it?
So the grant that I get to work on at Rogers State University, it's called a HEPS grant, and it's from the state of Oklahoma. And HEPS stands for Higher Education Prevention Services. And so my role at the university and where I really focus whenever it comes to substance misuse is prevention, meaning ideally accessing students and giving them information, skills, connections, and resources that will help prevent those behaviors from taking place in the first place before an issue develops in the choices that they're making. Now, we know that when it comes to substance misuse, from prevention all the way to harm reduction is a spectrum. And so there's a lot of gray area as far as how we address this issue in our community. But I really try and focus on giving students, like I said, the education and resources that they need to make healthy choices in the first place.
How many times have you heard, oh, once or twice isn't going to hurt me? It won't get me involved.
Yes. People of all ages from all different walks of life have used that language and unfortunately have, based on being predisposed to substance misuse, have developed patterns in their life that they probably would not have selected as the patterns for
I
their
know our
life.
own legislature, God help them, has discussed the issue of some sort of tax incentive program on so many of the head shops that are up and running on every street corner in the city that they could use to pave roads or something, which seems asinine to me, you know, to take advantage of folks like, hey, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that is the situation with a lot of different dispensaries. Unfortunately, a lot of the times, the marijuana that is sold at those dispensaries ends up in the hands of folks who do not have the ability to purchase it directly from the dispensary. And that's really where I am concerned. I think there's a lot of misinformation that's available, particularly to youth and young adults, and that's where my concern primarily lies because their brain is not fully developed yet. And so inserting a substance that oftentimes is not the best solution for whatever it is that they are up against can have damaging impacts on their brain and their body.
They can last quite a while. I read recently that a lot of drugs from the 60s are making a comeback. Is that true?
It is. Yes. It seems to be pretty cyclical in the sense of, you know, what was previously a pattern in earlier generations coming back around. Obviously, we know one major issue currently is the fentanyl crisis that's taking place in our community, but then in so many other communities as well. And so that's a primary area of focus as well for this grant.
What do you do about it?
I think,
excuse me for interrupting,
Sure.
but it seems like education doesn't necessarily take hold with this age group.
Yeah.
So how do you nip it in the bud?
Yeah, sure. And so there's been a lot of exploration and research surrounding that idea of what is actually effective when it comes to preventing behaviors from taking place. And we now have enough information and data to see that telling kids or young adults just don't engage in this behavior isn't effective. And oftentimes giving them statistics and just lecturing also isn't effective. There's a concept that circulates that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, the opposite of addiction is connection. And so I always lean into that idea whenever I'm delivering programming to students, in the sense of, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are you spending time with? What spaces are you spending time in? Because that will play a heavy influence on the decisions that you make and the person that you develop into while you're at college.
It comes down to if you're running with the same crowd and you're trying to quit, you ain't gonna quit.
Yeah.
So you gotta change, make major changes in the lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's hard. I definitely want to take note of that folks that are battling with substance misuse, it truly is a disease that they have to combat daily. And so I just, of course, want to make note of it is no easy matter to be in recovery, and I have incredible respect for people who make the decision every day that they need to make to be sober.
One more question, and
Sure.
I swear to God, I won't ask you anymore. Well, that's a lie. It seems like it's a wave sweeping across the country, not from any one part. It's just there. Am I reading this wrong, or is there some sort of invisible wave out there that seems to be affecting first kids on the West Coast, then the Central region, then the East Coast, or from Canada to Mexico?
As far as substance misuse and just engaging in those behaviors, I don't know specifically what pattern it's following geographically in our country, but it makes sense that ideas kind of work their way toward the center of the country in other areas and in other disciplines. But I mean, even just going back to the idea of connection, kids now are less social and less connected to one another than in previous generations. And
Boy,
so
no
I
kidding.
think that is really playing a big part in it. And not to point to social media as the issue for everything, because it can be used for good, but I know that also plays a very heavy role in access to substances, in what they believe is normal, in what they believe will lead to fulfillment and happiness and connection with other people. It's oftentimes not an accurate message.
Or get them through that term paper?
Yeah, or that.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
Will you do this again with us?
Absolutely.
We'd like to maybe explore this and maybe a longer segment.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
We're all out of time. Thank you for being a part of it, and we'll see you back here next time.